Hello, my name is Kate, and I'm going to be talking about the books I have read most recently. They're not my favorite books of 2025, even though I read them in 2025. They're just the ones that, I don't know, have struck an impact. What? Struck a chord, I guess? Left an impact? Okay. Okay. The first book is Bluets by Maggie Nelson. I picked up this book because I initially read The Argonauts by the same author, and I loved her writing style so much. I thought it was so refreshing and interesting. Can those describe the same things? I don't know. It was just so interesting to read a writing style like hers because I hadn't really seen it before. She sort of blends memoir and critical theory and sort of different creative writing styles into one, and I thought it was so cool to read. I felt really smart when I was reading her, but I picked up Bluets afterward, and I don't know if I liked which one. I don't know if I can compare the two. This one, Bluets, stuck with me because it's mainly just about the color blue, but it's so much more complex than that. It's about the color blue, but it's written and broken down into different fragments, and there's different parts that just talk about what the color blue means to her and how it can represent so many complex emotions like love and sadness and loss and desire and so many things. And she does the same thing in her writing style where she blends sort of narrative with poetry, with memoir, with critical theory, I guess. It really felt, again, so refreshing to read. And I started noticing the color blue everywhere I went. When I was reading it, I went to an art exhibit and there was just a full gallery just about the color blue. And to start it off, there was a poem about the color blue. And I love when books sort of correlate with your life. I don't know. I thought it was really interesting, and I now love looking at colors and seeing how the deeper meaning, I guess, what I can dig and get out of them, if that makes sense. Anyways, the next book is A Spy in the House of Love by Anaïs, and this one is the one that the plot has left me completely. I don't remember the characters' names, and I honestly don't remember what they did, and I need to reread the book. So why am I still talking about it? Well, actually, I do know. It's because I picked this book up at a library because I'd never read anything by Anaïs Nin, and I really wanted to because her journal quotes kept showing up on my Pinterest, and I was like, wow, I need to read her. And so I picked up a random book by her, and then one night when I couldn't sleep, I started reading it, and I didn't read the whole book, but I read a large chunk just in that night because I was so shocked by the way that she could explain exactly what I was feeling. It felt like some sort of surreal, magical experience. I was so shocked. My tears welled up in my eyeballs. From what I can remember, A Spy in the House of Love is about a woman who is having an affair with other men while she's in a relationship and married. But what got me the most was themes about sort of identity and this thrill that the main character is searching for in her life that she can't find. And a lot of it talks about this idea of a fragmented self and feeling like you are so many people at once with different people, and how with one person you act a certain way and you are a certain person, but then with someone else you act a totally different way. And she's dealing with so many things, with this guilt of having an affair, having many affairs, but also of wanting thrill in her life. And the writing and it was so good. It was really good. And that description and that what I'm saying right now does not do it justice, but just know it was a great book and I really loved it. The next one is Susan Sontag's journals. I read both of them. The first one is Reborn, which was written when she was 14 to around 30, I think. And then the second one is As Consciousness is Harnessed to Flesh. It's always a tongue twister. But these ones were written in her later life. I didn't write down the age. I don't know if it's specified what age she is. The first one I probably resonated with the most because I'm of a similar age to her when she's writing them. I was jealous that she was writing these journals at 14 and it was beautiful, whatever. But her journals are structured less like a narrative form. Cover my boots. They are much more of just her thoughts and everything that goes on in her brain. So it reads less like a normal book would, or a normal journal, I'd say. There's a lot of lists, a lot of things that she's just trying to make sense of. But I love reading writer's journals, and especially Susan Sontag's. I feel like just the way that she thinks is so smart. And I loved, this book particularly was called Reborn because she talks a lot about having the chance to live again and again and keep being reborn and discovering herself again, especially because she's in her 20s and she's discovering different things. She talks about her sexuality and her identity and her work life, and I loved getting a glimpse into her mind, which I think journals do a great job of, even if I personally really, really love reading journals. And so after I read Reborn, I read As Consciousness is Harnessed to Flesh, and this one you can definitely see her development in her writing style and just her age and her thought process. It goes more into her analyzing why she does the things she does, just trying to make sense of the world. I think Susan Sontag does a really great job of making sense of the world. I'm obsessed. Okay, enough about Susan Sontag. On to the next. I read Why Be Happy When You Can Be Normal by Jeanette Winterson. As a plus to this one, this year I read Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, also by her, and I loved that book. Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit is a semi-autobiographical novel about a young woman who was adopted into I forget what denomination it was. Is it Pentecostal? Did I even pronounce that right? It was a very strict Christian church, and it just talks about her dealing with this life that she's in and with her mother, especially when she is a lesbian. She's a gay woman. So that, and it just shows her leaving her town And the reason that this book I mean the writing style was beautiful, but the reason that the book mainly stuck with me was the end description she writes about God, and it's the most beautiful description of God I've read, and I wanted her to talk about it more, like, so terribly. I feel like it just ended and I was craving for more of that description and more of that sort of reflection, which I feel like Why Be Happy When You Can Be Normal is just a continuation of that reflection, which I adored. Not particularly about the reflection about God, but just her reflections about life in general. I think she's such a great writer. This book is much more of a memoir, and it talks about her life sort of after she wrote Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. She sort of clears up a lot of things. She talks about what happened, how her mother reacted when she wrote that book. And a large part was about how literature was sort of her escape, and for her to make a way for her to make sense of the world. She says it was like a safe haven for her. And the way that this book is written is so good, so well done. It's just a lot about her search for a home and belonging, and her search of love. And there's a big theme centered around home, which I resonated with a lot. There's a lot of quotes that I just gobbled up. I thought they were so good. Especially one where she describes home sort of being... She's talking about home, and she's saying it's much harder to leave the psychic place. That's not a direct quote, but a lot about how it's harder to leave the psychic place in your mind than the physical home, which is very true. It's a great quote. Okay, that's Jeanette Winterson. The next one is Valley of the Dolls. This book got me out of a reading slump. It was just so fun. I adored it. I keep saying that. I'm not a very big vocabulary. Anyways, this book was just such a fun read. It's about 3 women, Anne, Nellie, and Helen, and they're all interconnected in New York in the 1960s. And at first they're connected by their careers. That's sort of how they meet in this Hollywood, Broadway industry. They all are very ambitious women with large goals and things that they want to accomplish in their life. But then, as society and this industry sort of wears them down, they all become even more connected by these little pills that they take that they bring them to, like, the Valley of the Dolls is what it's called. But it was just so fun. It was a really fun book. There's so much about sort of Hollywood and the downsides of fame and of aging in that industry, and sort of, especially in the 60s, what women sort of go through and their mindsets, and dealing with money and love and power and success. And I love reading books about Hollywood, so it was just such a fascinating read. Last one, I'll talk about one more. Last one is First Love. So this is such a short story, and it was beautiful and heartbreaking, and it was about a boy who falls in love with his next door neighbor, who is a lovely young lady who I didn't write her name down, and that's okay. I didn't write the boy's name down either. But he falls in love with her, and he sort of falls in love with this idea of her. And I don't want to say too much about it because it is pretty short, but it was the scenery, the setting that was described was really stunning. Okay, those are my books. Hope it was enjoyable. Hope I wasn't confusing and I didn't I didn't so those are my books. Hope this was enjoyable. Hope it wasn't too confusing. And yeah. Okay.